So you're due now. You were asked what type of writing do you like and why. So I'm going to pull a couple stickies off, and I want you to read what your classmates wrote for me out loud. Nice and loud, Jordan.
This person said argumentative writing. The reason being that they like to state their opinion and claims and prove why they're right.
Ooh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
This person said, I prefer narrative writing over any other kind of writing because I love stories that are told from a perspective of someone that it affects.
Okay, this person said informative, and they said because it's based on feelings, it's direct, it can be proven, it gives them something to talk about, and increases general knowledge.
Okay. So we have three distinct people that have three very different perspectives on which type of writing is best. Does anybody want to share out something that we didn't talk about? Anybody have like, oh my god, no, you guys are actually wrong, this is the best type of writing because?
Can we agree?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I agree with the informational one.
Why?
Because it's facts, and it's like some of the things that's on there, like if you would ask questions, you can use common sense to make emphasis on what asking is.
Interesting. So this is interesting, right? And the reason that we brought this up is because a lot of times you go into your English class and you're like, all right, writing an essay today. And then you come into science and you're like, essay? And then social studies, you're like, why are we writing an essay? And there's different types of writing for different content areas. And unfortunately, you have to be masters of all of them, whether you like them or not. And you also have to realize what just generally good writing is, because as Ms. Gabriel is going to talk about, there's just good writing strategies that can be applicable across all content areas. Okay? So, yeah. Our learning target for today, let me turn out the lights for a second, it's going to get dark in here for 30 seconds. Can I have a volunteer read my learning target nice and loud for me? Volunteer, someone with a nice loud voice. Go ahead, Anita.
Students will construct a CER based on their analysis of the Chernobyl disaster and identify how the effects of radioactive isotopes impacted the town and the surrounding area, and continue to do so using text-based evidence and scientific principles.
Okay, so does this sound like something we've done in here before? Okay, the CER is very, very normal. What words jump out at you in this learning target, though, that you're like, oh, hold on, wait a second. Huh? I gave you some prior knowledge on Chernobyl, but that does jump out at you, right? So the difference between this CR and previous ones that we've done is the content knowledge, right? So you have Chernobyl disaster, radioactive isotopes, and obviously you're going to be using different scientific principles here, right? Okay? So we are shooting for this level 4 of success criteria, where you're going to create a CER that contains complete, appropriate, and accurate text evidence. Because in our CERs, where is our biggest weakness as a class? Fluffy writing and evidence. I love you all. Okay? So Ms. Gabriel is here because we're doing this cross-curricular lesson that is going to help us impact some of those struggling areas.
So the reason we decided to plan this lesson together, a lot of you are my students, but if you're not, I teach English 2 here. And so we were in a meeting together where we were analyzing data from iReady in the fall. You have these graphs in front of you, but they are in black and white, so we wanted you to also see them in color. So not only is this going to show why we felt the need to collaborate on this lesson, but also analyzing data itself is a skill. As an English teacher, every year people ask me why on the English section of the SAT, why on the English section of the PARCC do I have to analyze data? Analyzing data is part of reading comprehension. You have to do it in every subject area. So if you look at the first graph, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm going to give you time to analyze it on your own. But this is showing the different parts of the iReady test. So vocabulary, literature, and informational, and how each grade level did with each type of question. Then the second graph shows our progression from 2017 to 2019 and how each grade level has done over the years. So that's 2017, 18, and 19 for 9th, 10th, and 11th. 12 does not take iReady. That's the only reason they're not on here. And then this shows growth and regression. So when we're talking about growth and regression, we mean from the previous time that you took the test, which was in spring of last year to fall of this year. So under the line would be, this is labeled by teacher. So it would be students in these classes regressed, so their scores went down, students here went up. So here is all of the data, and you have this in front of you. So we are going to give you a few minutes. Are you going to pass up the whiteboard?
Yeah, so what we're going to do, guys, you guys are used to using the big whiteboards, right? So what I want you to do is in your groups, I want you to have a big whiteboard in your table, and I just want you to use it to start jotting down some guiding questions. And you'll see those guiding questions
On the last page.
on the last page of your handout there. Okay?
So we want you to discuss what you notice about the data. What does it make you wonder? So you can ask questions. This should raise some questions for you. It raised questions for us. And then what the data tells you about your specific grade level. So if you're 10th grader, special attention to the 10th grade data.
Okay? Yes. Yes. So on your whiteboards, right, you're whiteboarding, right? You can erase, like that's what whiteboarding is for. It's for making mistakes. It's for adding things. It's for being able to look, right? We all know how to whiteboard in here. So one person from each group, go grab a whiteboard, markers for every person, and a paper towel. I'm going to turn the lights on because it's too dark. It is. Yeah. We're going to give you 6 minutes on my timer to do this, okay? So, diligently.
I'll wait until they sit in the
Yes.
So what do you see, what do you wonder, and what grade level trends? And I'm starting the time now. Figure out why. Why am I frightened by that?
So looking at the data, right? You're answering on your whiteboard, like everybody can have their own questions, right? You're answering these 3 things, right? What do you know this? Okay, what do you see about this? Just general facts about this, right? What questions does this pose to you? Like, why is this like this? Or what caused this? And then, do you guys get what you're looking at your grade level?
This is the chart
Okay,
that
so 10th grade was this should start grade. I know you guys do the bottom, but 11th grade, they can't come in like, what does it mean their data looks like?
2 11th grade teachers.
Don't worry about 11th grade teachers. What I'm saying, look at your grade level, look at the other 2.
Yes.
Okay.
The reason it's scary is because of how many, right?
My data analysis bug.
Yes, no.
What does it mean in
It's not all that great. This data is not good at all. Just keep it out.
Okay, I'm just
Why
asking,
is it
can
so
we
low?
state the obvious? Yeah, state the obvious. Not everybody is master graph interpreters like yourselves. So
Everybody except for every class except for 2 teachers. They are above 2 and 13.
state that opinion, Jordan. That can be your opinion, right?
Literally every teacher besides.
That's not an opinion. That is a fact.
Okay, well then state your
Every
truth.
teacher besides. I was
Write your
saying this
content, Jordan.
Citing from a graph is still text evidence.
She's in Johnson. He's not with us.
Yeah, all of them.
No, I'm the Mr. Mush. I'm the low end. Yes. Well,
That's a good question that Danita just asked. You can analyze any graph, all 3 of them. I want you to look at all of them.
oh, okay.
And at the bottom, I don't mean it like that, but I'm saying like, why are you starting the writing halfway down? We're all making it.
I thought at least split it was like that.
Alright.
Beautiful. You're too beautiful.
Yes, I hit the. As a school. Because we have one thing in common across all the grade levels.
Yes, so this is new for yours, if you get the data up there. The first block is Rick County, 2017, 2018, 2019, it's the same all the way. Okay, so I'm going to the same because she's only one special attention to this, right?
So everybody else is cooler blended with. What is, define that, what do you mean specifically by that?
Check, star, highlight, underline.
So if they're below the line, there's 4 lines down the line.
So maybe they guessed or whatever?
Maybe. But just, if you're just listing facts, the fact is that most people went down, right? But I don't want you to just say it back, okay?
Let's not just say comprehend.
Yes, okay. So they regressed. That doesn't mean that their overall level was bad, but it means that they did worse than the last time they took it.
You have a little less than 2 minutes to get your stuff on the board. Multiple people could be writing on the board. It doesn't have to be straight across. You can go up there, Ashton.
The informational, these classes, right? These all grades. No, this for each teacher, and this if they up here, if they over this line, I mean they improved. If they under it, then I mean they did. Alright, so should I write classes or grades? Classes, because it's not based on grade level, because I don't have one specific grade. Okay. Oh, the informational.
Yeah.
No, you don't have anything for me.
It's only certain teachers. Yeah, don't worry about that right now.
That's the summertime. Just think about that.
About a minute left. About 30 seconds.
Oh yeah, totally.
Finish up your final thought. All right, if we could get your attention back up front, please. Let's just start with the first chart on your paper.
Can everybody see if I leave the lights on? Like, okay, because like, okay. Because you also have it in front of you.
So based on just this chart, what did you notice? What trends? Jabria.
I said, in the information here, like information text, every word becomes the lowest.
Yes. And what is an informational text?
Information text is the one that can be fixed.
Okay. And so what would be the opposite of that?
Fiction or like literature.
Yes. So that's actually the point we wanted you to get at the most. So the reason that we decided to combine and do this joint lesson is that we noticed that no matter your grade level, informational text did the worst. So we did pretty good with literature already, but we're struggling with informational text, and that is something that you see in every subject, not just English. So we really wanted to work to give you skills to tackle these texts in every subject area. Just because you take the test with your English teacher doesn't mean you shouldn't be still utilizing the skills that you learned in science. So
Right, because like the point is, you come into this room understanding, oh, okay, Ms. Cordisco asks me to write, I'm writing in CER format, this is how I do this. And so we want you, no matter which classroom you walk into, if you see an informational text, you put your mindset, right, you like zen yourself out into Ms. Cordisco's classroom. So you go back to your knowledge of what to do for that.
what trends do we see here in the progression from 2017 to 19? Yes?
They all increased.
Okay. So,
I can see the increase on it. I don't really know the 10th grade any in the, I'm not sure which one it is, like the middle. From
2018.
Yeah, I think it's increased.
Small increase.
But that's a good observation, because the nice thing about this data is that everyone has increased. Every time we take the test yearly, we do better. But I did notice in 10th grade there was the least amount of growth. So that is something that I had questions around, so I'm glad you got questions around that too. And then the growth and regression chart. What do we notice here? Yes?
Only 2 teachers' classes grew.
Okay, only 2 teachers' classes grew, yes.
Only one of the teachers' class then grew to 5th grade. The other one didn't.
Yes, okay, so that's interesting, right? So if we're breaking this up into grade level, only one 10th grade class grew. One 11th grade class grew a lot, and no 9th grade classes grew, right? So what does this make you wonder? Why?
Yes.
Yeah.
Danita?
I was gonna ask, like, in my own words, I was gonna say, like, is this before they get into the class, or like during when they get in, like they test and stuff like that? Because the question is, like, I'm not saying like what are the teachers doing, like are they teaching well, or is the students are not paying attention, or is it just like the students don't try their best, they don't want to do anything, or they cheat, and then like 11th grade, 11th graders, 12th graders, some of them aren't like us. They would cheat regardless if they get it done, or some people are actually smart. So that's what I kind of question about that one class that's all the way up there, and why everybody else is like so at the bottom, like they're not trying their best, or like the teachers are not pushing them to do better.
I want to know, when was this? Was this the first already back from break?
Yes.
Because then that can say they wasn't studying, or not studying, but they wasn't reading or doing anything over the summertime.
Yes.
How many of you have heard of summer slide? Right? Summer slide is that students essentially lose anywhere between half a grade level and a full grade level over the summertime. Here's the data.
Jordan?
I have a question. My question was, what do like other school scores look like compared to ours?
That's a great question. We'd have to look that data up, but that's something we can look up and try to find. That's a good point, because we know Poly gives more summer work than what we do. You guys only had summer work for English, correct?
Yeah.
Poly gives more summer work for multiple subjects.
But your summer reading was based on what kind of text? Yeah, a narrative text. So doesn't it make sense that we did better in literature then?
Yes.
If we're supposing that a student only has access to summer reading, that's the only work they do over the summer, wouldn't it make sense that they would score higher in that area?
Yes.
Yeah. So a question that I had when I saw this was, is this typical? Do we see this regression every year, or was it special to this year? I think that's the question we need to answer to see if we should be afraid of this, or if this is just kind of what it looks like in the fall.
Yeah, I was about to say, even on that note, I think that we should wait until the next already to like really see if this is like a really big problem. But if they're still that low, there's something wrong with them.
But I do want to point out though that this doesn't have anything to do with the overall reading level. This is just saying whether it went up or down. It's not saying, like, this could have been, a 3rd grade read or average of a 10th grade read. This is just showing movement. This isn't showing overall reading level.
And one other quick thing that I wanted to point it out here, right? This is grade level, right? What is the highest average grade level that any grade achieved? 8th grade, right? 11th graders achieved an average of an 8th grade reading level. 11th grade has the highest average here, right? And their highest average right, is an 8th grade reading level. Let that sink in for a second. Who thinks that they personally are on an 8th grade reading level?
We wouldn't like to think that.
Right? So let's figure out where the disconnect is. Okay? Alright, so we are going to work now on a writing prompt, and I'm so excited. Can I have a volunteer pass this out for me, please? Bam. Yeah. So we are going to work on a writing prompt for the next few days on Chernobyl. I gave you some background information on Chernobyl, right? I want you guys to keep your whiteboards out just because it might be a good space for you to write down questions. Like if me and Ms. Gabriel are teaching and you have questions, it might be a good place for you to jot down some stuff so you can just write right on top of your whiteboard. It's not going to hurt them, okay? So, what unit are we in for chemistry? Like, what are we learning? Nuclear chemistry, right? So, we're talking about the Chernobyl disaster because then it obviously has something to do with... We missed... Need what, another rubric? Yeah. One more rubric, Ms. Gabriel. Oh, okay. So, obviously the Chernobyl disaster has something to do with nuclear chemistry, right? Okay. So, I want you guys to flip in the handout that has the pictures on it to the back page, right, the last page, where it gives you your essay prompt. Okay? Can I have somebody read for me that first little paragraph there that starts with following? Go ahead.
Following the above introduction to Chernobyl, explore 3 different isotopes that were released into the atmosphere and contaminate numerous parts of Europe. In a written essay, attempt to sympathize with those affected by these radioactive contaminants. Answer the following questions and see your informant.
Okay, so, pause there. Okay, so you are going to be looking at different isotopes, okay? We all know what an isotope is, yes? That vocabulary, yes? Good?
Yes.
Okay? Number 1, somebody read the first thing that I'm expecting in this essay. Actually, call on somebody.
In your claim, identify how the release of radioactive isotopes after the Chernobyl disaster affected the town and surrounding our areas, and how does this disaster still possess a problem today?
So, in your claim, right, so we should be starring this because this is literally the basis for your whole essay. In your claim, you are telling me how did these isotopes affect the surrounding area, what is their effect still today, right? Somebody give me something that your claim should not have in it. What should your claim not start with? I believe, I think. What else should your claim not start with? Right, like all that, or yes or no's, right?
Same with English. Don't start with I think or I feel. Do you know how I know you think it? Because your name is on it.
Okay? Remember, state your thought as a fact, because what is the whole point of CER? You're going to back up your thoughts with a fact?
Facts.
Facts, plural, okay? Hashtag facts, plural, right? Number 2, define isotope, define radioactive isotope. Okay, so I want to make sure that it is clearly to me that you understand what those things are, right? What an isotope is, and more specifically, what does it mean for something to be radioactive? Okay? Number 3, read that final one for me. Go ahead, Danita.
What caused the environmental health problems that resulted from the incident, and how and why is there a lasting effect?
Okay, so you are looking for evidence of not only what the initial damage was, but what effect it still poses today. Okay? Because one of the major questions that we looked at in the very first lesson was, are we too afraid of radiation? And that's been an ongoing theme that we've been exploring throughout this unit. Okay?
So those of you that have me as a teacher have seen this rubric directly, but even if you haven't seen it directly in your English classes, this is what we are all using per the state of Maryland to score your writing. This is what they use to score your writing on the MCAP, on the PARC, And so we're just trying to get some consistency across the different content areas. The way you write in each subject is going to be different, but there's certain aspects of good writing that's just good writing no matter the content area, right? So you have the entire rubric, but we just want to focus today on the first column, which is W9A. So I want you to look across the first column, the 4, the 3, the 2, the 1, and the 0, and I just want you to underline the adjectives. Because the adjectives are going to give you a clue as to the differences between a 4 and a 3, between a 3 and a 2, 2 and a 1, etc. So just take a minute for that. You can write directly on the paper, it's yours to keep.
Literally a minute, Mrs. Gabriel?
Yeah, literally a minute.
Okay, minute.
Just underline. Let me grab this right away. It's so nice that in an honors class, I don't have to say what an adjective is. Right? Okay, good.
There's another reason we're doing this with you guys, because you already are at a high level. Most of you scored well on Park, most of you scored pretty okay on iReady. So it's even harder to get you guys move up and significantly. Because you're already so in there.
Okay, if you're still writing, that's fine. But obviously, we want all of you to score a what?
4.
A 4. So let's look at what it takes to score a 4. So in every category, you have to, the response has to demonstrate an understanding. What kind of understanding does it have to demonstrate to be a 4? What does it say? What are the words here?
Complex.
Full and complete understanding. How is that different, Shabria, from a 3?
It's different from a 3 because a 3, the ideas must be complex and they just say it must be clearly stated. And
Okay.
Because it clearly doesn't mean that it's necessary.
Helper?
It says adequate,
What does that mean?
like,
Your face kind of says it there.
Yeah, your
like
face.
you understand, but you don't really understand. It's like, I can't
Or-
explain.
Or not as much, not as much evidence needed.
Right, it's like basic.
Yeah. If you get a 3, you understood. It was okay, right? But we don't want to just be adequate in an honors class, right? So to get a 4, it's a full and complete understanding. You understood every single part of the prompt, right? Haven't we noticed in both science and in English that a lot of times the prompts are asking you to do more than one thing at the high school level? It's not just answering one question, right? So this is about addressing all parts of the prompt. Full and complete understanding of ideas in the text by providing what type of analysis? Accurate. So what does that mean? Does it mean that you just have any old quote? It has to be correct, and it has to make sense, right? So I can't speak to what Ms. Cordisco sees in science, but a lot of times what I see in English is that people understand that there needs to be a quote, so they just pull any quote, but that doesn't mean that the quote is necessarily supporting them. Sometimes the quote is going against what they're saying, right? So it has to be accurate. Supported with what kind of textual evidence? Effective and convincing textual evidence. Okay, so your text evidence needs to convince me of your point. That is the purpose of it. The text evidence is supporting what you have already said in your claim. So Ms. Cordisco says that we struggle with evidence in science. We struggle with it in English too, but it looks a little bit different in science because in science, correct me if I'm wrong because I am not a science person, but when you do the E and CER, you're only stating facts, right? You're not giving your opinion yet. It's just straight evidence and facts. Is that correct? Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. So keeping that in mind, making sure that the evidence makes sense and that we are only responding with facts because the R is where you kind of support in your own words, right?
Yep.
Okay, got it. So we are going to keep this in mind. This E and CER, the text evidence, is our focus for this prompt. And now we're going to go over how to approach informational text in order to address the prompt.
So I know that when you take state tests, right, you are under a time crunch. So you might not have time to do every single one of these strategies. But if you are given something like where you have an extended period of time to do this, give yourself like time, do the article justice, okay? So you might have to combine some of these strategies on, say, like a Harper or SAT type stuff. What is it called now? The PCAP?
MCAP.
MCAP.
Peacock. The peacock.
So we understand that, but right now we're doing best practices as if you have all of the time, okay? So when you read a text for the first time, do you normally, what are you normally doing? What are you normally reading for? What do you like in English or science? Just what are you normally reading for?
A basic understanding.
A basic understanding. When you have informational text, what is going to be a big barrier in your basic understanding? Keywords, vocab, right? So if you don't understand the complex vocabulary or the scientific vocabulary, that's going to impede your ability to read for deeper understanding, okay?
And I also want to add to that to say, so those of you that have me as a student know that when we are annotating literature, what do I ask you to use as a clue to find the main idea?
Context clue.
The title. I ask you to use the title as a clue to find the main idea. So that sometimes works with informational text, but you have a little bit more than just the title to go off of. Before you even start reading, there's usually pictures, there's usually headings. There's some kind of text structure that allows you to make predictions. Yes?
Well, I was going to say the little section after the title, or that come before that explains about all the word.
Yes.
Subtitles.
Yes, the subtitles, the captions, all of those little blurbs should all allow you to make some prediction and activate some kind of a prior knowledge before you even begin to read. So just looking at this article, what do you already know that it's going to be about that you have learned about before? Okay, the Chernobyl explosion. We know that from the title, based on the pictures, even if you didn't know what Chernobyl was. What did you glean from the pictures and the headings?
It was a change.
There was a change. Okay, there's a before and an after picture. If I didn't know what Chernobyl was at all, I would know there was some kind of a change. Okay, it says in the captions what word is standing out if I didn't know what Chernobyl was.
Accident.
Accident, right? So before I start reading, I know that there was some kind of a change, there was some kind of an accident. It's a disaster, so something bad is happening here, right? So all of this, I'm not necessarily saying this directly to myself, but like to be a good reader, these are the things that are going through my mind without me having to even think about it, and we want this to become second nature for you too.
Alright, so I'm going to model for you how I would attack this first paragraph, okay, with as far as vocab goes, okay? Then you are going to have about 6 minutes to read the article, and you are just going to be reading for confusing words or words that, you know, are posing you a little bit of a problem, okay?
I love this because it is just the same way we approach poetry. Because I was telling my students last week, when you have a poem, there's a lot of complicated figurative language. If you don't figure out the vocabulary first, nothing else is going to make sense, right? Same thing with informational text. If you don't know the vocab, nothing else will make sense. So the first time we read it through, only vocab.
Only vocab. I'm not looking for deeper meaning. I am not pulling out, oh my god, it looks like it's going to be a great quote. Just vocab, okay? On April 26, 1986, due to a combination of the construction of the power plant and human error, there was a meltdown inside the reactor in Unit 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The subsequent steam explosion and fire blew the 1,000-ton roof off the building and allowed radioactive material to escape. How much radiation were those workers in direct proximity exposed to? At the time of the explosion at Chernobyl, one source says, on the roof of the destroyed reactor building, the radiation levels reached a frightening 100,000 R per hour. Okay? So, before I even start going back through some of these, you know, kind of more vocab words, something that sticks out to me, because we all know how I feel about this, right? Numbers need to have what? If you tell me the answer is 7, I usually say 7 what fish? Why?
Units.
The units, right? So, what is this unit?
R.
What is an R?
Radiation.
Okay, so
That's a rhyme.
So it's not a good. So, right, it is wonderful that you guys can use your context clues to realize this has something to do with measuring the level of radiation, right? So this is measuring the level of radiation. Even if you don't know that it is, and it is like a really weird word, guys. This R stands for like Rengerts or something like that. It almost sounds like your name. And it's spelled like R-E-O. It's very weird. But even though you didn't know exactly what that R stood for, based on the context clues, you can be like, okay, this measures the level of radiation. So we can assume what? The higher the number, the more what? More radiation. Excellent. What are some other words that are coming out to me that I should look at this? Well,
Radioactive.
okay, so radioactive, I need to make sure I know what that is. That actually, because I read my essay prompt ahead of time, I know that that's something that I have to define anyway. Okay? Good.
I was gonna say you can put what a ton is, even though we should know, but I mean some people may not understand.
Okay, so if you needed to underline ton, cool. Because again, units are important to understand. This word right here, proximity, right? Proximity. So indirect proximity. So what does that mean? So what does proximity mean? So
It's right on the point, like it's
The space.
the space between. Okay, so making sure I understand that. And then one other thing that I want to make sure that I underline here is reactor. Right? Because, again, we know what a reaction is. What is a reactor? Right? What is a reactor? How is that, why is that important, right? How does that affect Chernobyl? Like
maybe
what,
that was like the start of it, like that's what.
possibly, we might have to read on a little bit in this article to really get an idea of what a reactor is. Is a reactor a noun in this, or is it an adjective? Is it describing unit 4? Right? So what is a reactor? What is this reactor?
The substance that's reacting.
It could be a substance. We're going to have to read on a little bit, but I underlined it because that way in my mind, okay, as I'm reading, I know that I need to find something for this because on a test, right, let's pretend that this is your Unit 2 test. Can you pull out your phone and Google what reactor is? No, you're going to have to rely on your knowledge and context clues. Okay? That's probably where I would have stopped. Is there any other words in this passage that you need to find right now? Because we have that ability. No? Okay.
Well, what is subsequent?
Oh, okay. So Chernobyl is the name of the power plant that we're talking about. Okay, so it's a place, right? It's a building. And then subsequent. What does subsequent mean? So it says the subsequent steam explosion. Not necessarily amount. What does, so go back a little bit before. So it says, the subsequent steam explosion and fire blew the 100-ton roof off the building. Not strong, but I can see why you would think that, right? So subsequent in this sense right here means that this is the result, right? The result of this explosion was, the result of this reactor, everything that was going on caused steam and all of this radioactivity to build up, okay? So that's what subsequent is there. Any other words? Okay, so I am going to set 6 minutes on my timer. You have 6 minutes to finish reading this article, and you are just looking for vocab. And don't underline vocab because you think oh, I need to underline something. Underline what you need to know, right? Underline what is confusing to you or what you think that you need clarity on, okay? Stop. 6 minutes. Now. No. Sure.
Okay.
A little more than 2 minutes remaining. Okay, so I want you guys actually right now, take like 2 minutes and share out in your groups right now some of the words that you underline. A little bit of feedback though before you do that. So when I was walking around, I want to just call out a couple of really good things that I saw. So Ashley, I saw on Ashley's paper, she wrote down the pronunciation of some of the words, kind of like the phonetic spelling. So like Chernobyl, like you like typing it out. That's an excellent strategy, right? That way you, like if it's said out loud, that way you remember how to say it. Sometimes that can really help. I also saw some people when they were making annotations, they were drawing arrows back to other words. That was excellent. And one other bit of feedback as well is some of you were having a hard time just doing words. I saw some of you underlining more than just words, right? I know it's hard and it's difficult. We're going to practice the strategy, but make sure we're just doing words the first time, okay? So right now, 2 minutes in your groups, share out some of the things you underlined, see if your group can provide clarity for you. I want to hear talking.
Switch with?
That's that R.
So I put like isotopes, but I don't know.
Where was that?
And so you can see that parenthesis right there.
Because she had a job.
Isotopes are any element with the normal, well, an example of it would be like carbon. It has a mass of 12, but carbon can also have a mass of 14, but it's still carbon.
It would be carbon.
So it would just be carbon
It would only
14.
change
It's based off of the amount of, it's changed. Isotope is any element, well, any element can have it. Any element that can have, it has the same amount of protons, of course, but it can have different amounts of neutrons with it. So it can have less, they tend to have 12, but they can also have 11 or 13 or 14 as well.
Some just fighting safety, right? So there were
That was a
some
tough one choice.
alarming.
You did a good job though. Because, so, like, I didn't know what
right here. Wait, yeah, they wasn't trying to tell if I did the blue up or something.
I have no idea what any of
So,
But what I'm trying to show you is exactly
yeah, why would they try to keep that?
and show you strategies to have more of an idea of what I'm talking about than you did before.
Yes, after we talked yesterday, we were allowing the isotopes are elements. That's what you did. Oh, okay. So that is part of the human body system. So you have to do the biology of it, okay, human body system. Okay. So your thyroid glands are going to be
GRA,
and one of the things
that's like a graphic something.
okay, and the thyroid can regulate different hormones inside of the body. I'm not a biologist, but in general, right?
It's basically just a
Okay.
Which one this goes? There's no heat in here.
So basically the same
I'm
thing.
sorry, Autumn?
There's no heat in here.
The heat's on right now, Autumn.
No, it's not.
It is. Are you sure you're just getting sick?
I probably am, but I'm really freezing over here.
I'm sorry.
I don't know why. Right here, vent that.
This one.
Think about how nice and warm the reactor of Chernobyl was. All right, bring it back to me in 3, 2, 1. So, what did your group, so is there any words that you and your groups had underlined that you still don't understand that we need to clarify quickly? You were all able to do that. I saw Ms. Gabriel and myself walking around. Excellent. Was there anything that was super interesting that you noticed that you were able to then like pair back to something that you might have underlined and then found the answer to it later? This group had one that I want them to call out. Go ahead, Genevieve, you're pointing at it. Go ahead.
So actually, she parentheses the relative, which was what we underlined in the first paragraph, which was the R unit next to 100,000.
Very good. So even if I hadn't told you what this R per hour was, later on in the text, the actual word for it showed up, and that R was, that capital R was in parentheses, right? So she's talking about the second page, it's at the very top, one of those little bullet points. So there's again an example of how your reading can then answer your underlined questions, okay? You all did an excellent job with the vocab, yes?
Well, I had something that I actually was able to find that answer.
What?
Before.
Okay.
So it's a, well first I was able to identify the isotopes because I asked for my periodic table.
Ooh, I love that strategy.
I learned that it was cesium 137 and strontium 90, and then I noticed that they go into places in the body that they can't be pulled out of.
Excellent.
And then, but before it said went to the thyroid gland, and then it stated that they would go in places where they are possible.
I love the use of the periodic table. You might not have that in like a park tape scenario, but you always have that for your chemistry test. Last one so Ms. Gabriel can get started.
Oh, I was adding on to what she said there. I noticed that those elements that she said will all had half-lives. So if they all were...
Were their half-lives long or short?
They said, yeah, they were long. They were really long, like sufficiently long, is what they said.
And I love that because we've barely touched on half-lives, and you guys pulled that out. I love this class. Go, Ms. Gabriel.
So what we want to get across is that no matter what type of text you are reading, it is often necessary to read it more than once for a different purpose. So when we're annotating a text, we're simply reacting to that text to try to make meaning from it, which hopefully will be easier once we identify some of these unknown words. Now, the reason I'm going over this, I have way less background information than you do on this subject, right? You are a lot smarter than me in chemistry, I promise you that. I struggled to get a B in a regular chemistry class in high school, okay? But that's important because when you are taking PARC or SAT or any of these standardized tests, they're not necessarily giving you text that you have any background on, right? So I kind of needed to test myself to see, can I figure this out without that background knowledge, because sometimes you just won't have it and all you'll have to rely on are these skills and strategies, okay? So looking at just the first paragraph, we do have a focus question because we're writing an essay in the end, right? So if there was no focus question, I would say let's annotate for the main idea, but since there is, we're looking specifically for how did the release of radioactive isotopes affect the town and surrounding, yes, that's much better, just like my room, and surrounding area, and do they still pose a threat today? So what we're looking for is the effect of radioactive isotopes. So I can kind of just zero in on that and ignore everything else because that's what you're going to need in order to write the CER. So if I'm just looking at the first paragraph, on April 26, 1986, due to a combination of the construction of the power plant and human error, there was a meltdown inside the reactor in unit number 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. So the subsequent steam, explosion, and fire blew the 1,000-ton roof off the building. I think I'm going to underline that because to me, that is evidence of like the effect. We're starting to see the effect. Something happened. This is giving me a clue as to what the accident was if I had no prior knowledge. Fire blew the 1,000-ton roof off the building and allowed radioactive material to escape. How much radiation were those workers in direct proximity exposed to? So now that we've defined some of these words, I know that this is kind of telling me that workers at the power plant, so if they were in direct proximity to it, they were close to it, right? Like this is serious. This isn't mild. This isn't, you know, like on the other side of the country. This is right there. So workers at the power plant were near radioactive material. Now, because I don't have this strong background in science, and I'm trying to answer this focus question for the essay, I'm also going to ask a question instead of just summarizing. As I keep reading, what I'm going to look for is what effect does this kind of material have on people? So in order to answer how it affects the town, I need to know what does radioactive material do to people. We haven't really answered that yet, but that might be something that I look for as I continue on. So now, as I finish annotating, I'm only looking to pull evidence that's going to support the focus question. So I'm looking for how did the release of the radioactive isotopes affect the town and surrounding areas. Now, keep in mind, because this is a two-part question, right? So I'm not just looking for the effect, but do they still pose a threat today? I'm looking for evidence of that as well. So I'm probably also going to underline radiation levels reached a frightening 100,000 R's. What are R's again? Okay. So I don't know what that is, right? But I understand that if something's frightening, that's not good. Okay? So as I continue on, I'm looking for the specific effects on people and the town. So since you've already read this completely once through, you don't need to read word for word, right? Here we can skim a little bit more because it's the second read. We've already read it thoroughly once. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to annotate just for the focus question. And the focus question is what again?
How did the radioactivity isotopes affect the
town?
area?
Yes. How do radioactive isotopes affect the town? And what's the second part? What's the second part of the question?
What is the effect here today?
Yes. Do they still pose a threat today? So can we say 3 minutes? Okay.
So what's
What's this green index called for?
I'll get that to that in a second, I just wanted to
Okay,
print
so-
that we have, yeah.
It looks radioactive, doesn't it?
It is.
Tamara's like, no, it's not. You can write on where your erasers are, or is that your notes? She took her notes on the whiteboard. Love it. Do I need whiteboard desks?
About a minute left. I see people pulling out direct evidence on the whiteboard. What? Yeah. If you're in the middle of an annotation, try to finish up that sentence. You have about 30 seconds. Don't erase your whiteboard.
Until we get pictures of it.
Okay, so just like we did before, take 2 minutes just to share out in your groups what pieces of evidence you found to address the focus question.
I said that the directly will allow the radioactive isotopes to migrate into non-removable areas of the human body. The isotopes can cause cancer along with other medical defects.
Yes, we love T-Max.
Saying that 4,000 people died due to long-term effects of the radiation, and 31 people died immediately in the aftermath of the effects.
Yes, so that answers my original question, right? That's specifically the effect.
But the radioactive site where all of this stuff took place is actually still contaminated.
Yeah.
So people that go there and they touch those materials, they can still get exposed to that radiation.
That's good. Yes, because that answers the second part.
And the radiation also migrated like to different cities. Like it migrated from Ukraine all the way to Sweden, like affected the soil and stuff like that.
So that is a good point, right? So now if you both are pulling out that same point, right? That's like, ooh, okay, validation there. Like, this is a good point then, right? Excellent.
We're looking at it.
It says the background information of specific isotopes is in the second paragraph. It's like the last sentence, kind of. Is it the last sentence?
So let me ask you guys this, like, does going through these strategies, because remember, you kept losing like a point, right? And you kept going back and forth between getting good and then like 2 and then like back and forth. Is going through this helping you understand what pieces of evidence you should be pulling out? A little bit better, yes. A little bit better, okay. Because then we're going to go through a little bit more on the actual writing piece. But I just want to make sure this is.
Because people are. Can we get maybe 2 or 3 volunteers to just share out a really good piece of evidence they found to answer the coach's question? Yeah.
Oh, wait, I don't know what the answer is, but I found when it said this contamination may cause permanent and internal contamination. I mean, yes. The contamination of grain and dairy products from the fallout. So that's when they say this contamination, that's the contamination they were saying.
So what part of the focus question is that answering, the first part or the second part?
I think the second.
Yeah, the second, that lasting impact, right?
Jabria?
And I have an essay for the second part as well. And it says the Chernobyl Union of Ukraine, a group created by the disaster victims says a long-term death number is proof of 845,000.
Okay. So as compared to what? What was the original?
300.
That's a big difference, right? So that might be like worth noting, right? Darren?
I have an answer for the first question. It's, it says 60 miles north of Stockholm, Sweden, suddenly signs of abnormally high levels of radiation were found. Up to 5 times the minimum amount of radioactive emissions were found in soil and fingerprint plants.
Ooh, okay, so how far from Chernobyl was that?
60 miles north.
Ooh, excellent pull out there.
We're talking about lasting effects, right? That's more than just the people that were directly there. So I feel like that's pretty significant.
Farrell?
I got evidence for the second question. A short stay is relatively safe, but the area won't be fit for human habitation for these 10,000 years.
Beautiful.
That is
a lasting effect.
That is a lasting effect. Excellent. We're actually going to end it right there with that. That is excellent. So we're not done with this, obviously, guys. So you're going to be working on your CER. You'll have more time in class to work on it on Wednesday. Okay. This CER is due typed Thursday. So if you want to write that on your stuff, 11:59. Submit it to Google Classroom. Yes, you can submit it to Google Classroom this time. I have the folder. I just have to post it. And so now we're going to do your exit ticket. Okay, so on your green index card,
your radioactive card.
Yes, your radioactive colored card. You are writing your claim, right? So I want you to write your claim because that way I can give you feedback before Wednesday.
A claim in science is like a what in English?
Oh, never mind.
A claim in
A
science.
thesis.
Thank you.
Right? We don't need I think, we don't need I believe, we don't need I see, just state the fact.
No, I'm going to refuse to grade it on it. So in your claim, you're identifying how the radioactive isotopes after the Chernobyl disaster affected the town and surrounding areas, and how does this disaster still pose a problem today? That is what you are writing your claim on. And you have that question, right, in your article. It's the very first, it's the number 1 in your essay prompt. Okay? Your claim doesn't have to be 1 sentence, right? It can be 2, right? It can be, like, your thesis can be, and we'll work on complex sentences with our semicolons, right? That's something we can work on. Semicolon, moreover, comma. Okay? So we can work on that. So, and this is just your rough draft of it, right? I'm going to give you some feedback. Did you want some of this mistakes?
What we wanted you all to see today was the connection across classes. What we don't want is for you to feel like there's a certain way to approach the text in my English class, in my government class, in my science class. Because although we write differently, we want you to see the commonalities. Good writing is good writing in terms of citing textual evidence, and good reading strategies are good reading strategies in terms of text annotation.
What time is it?
They have.
It's on the back. They have 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes. When you're done with your exit tickets, put them back in my board. How you felt about today's lesson. Did you get it? Almost or no? Yes.
You can talk only if you want.